Hello. Well, we've had an election here in Britain, as British people will probably know. It's 2024, July, and the Labour Party, our left-wing party, kind of the equivalent of the Democrats in America, have won a landslide victory. Kind of. I mean, they've certainly won massively, but that's really because the party in government before, the Tories, the Conservative Party, known colloquially as the Tories, a bit like the American Republicans, got a severe thrashing, really, and deserved it. Just to give you an idea why I think the Labour gain isn't so great. They only increased their vote share by 1.6%, and yet they gained 211 extra seats in Parliament for a total of 412. I can't remember the exact number, but you need about 350 or something to be in an absolute majority. The Tories had that before, but they lost, I think, 19.3% of their vote share, which meant they lost 251 seats, and they only have 121 seats left now. So it's not so much that Labour won, it is that the Tories lost. Oh, I see the sunlight is going funny here. Can't help it really. This is Britain. Whoops. Well, it'll light me up eventually. Oh, it's alright. There's a cloud coming over. Great. And actually I should say a few more things about the votes, I suppose, but about the Tory thrashing. They've been really, really stupid throughout their term, or the last few terms, because they've been in power for 14 years, that's about 3 terms they've been in. And it's been corruption and scandals and incompetence all the way down the line. And during this election campaign, they didn't really campaign. It's like the powers that be have instructed them to lose. It's almost as if that happened, right? Who knows? Anyway, I didn't hear anything in my constituency from them. I only had a leaflet from the winning Labour candidate and a leaflet from the Social Democrats, who I also saw handing out leaflets. The Social Democrat Party won 0 seats in the election. They used to be a fairly mainstream party. Something like the Liberal Democrats, who are a middle party, kind of. But it's like they didn't campaign. They knew they were going to lose. They wanted to lose, in my view. They've made such a mess of the National Health Service, which they claimed was safe in their hands. It wasn't. They were lying. It probably is safe in Labour's hands, although they're still continuing with the Tories' privatisation nonsense. The problem with privatisation in health is that you're wasting money on profits which should be going to helping people. It is more expensive. The cost of treatment in Britain, we pay it through taxes one way or another, and it works out at about half the cost of the equivalent treatment in the United States for us, for treatment of equal quality. So there's really no case for it, unless you just want to make money. The other reason the Tories got thrashed, I think, is because they didn't control immigration like they promised. They came up with policy after policy, some of them quite bizarre, like exporting people to Rwanda. It's headline grabbing, but it's, well, stupid, really. It was never gonna happen. Even if it was a great idea, there'd be so much left-wing opposition from groups taking the government to court and so on, and there was. It's just guaranteed to fail. So they made promises on that and absolutely failed to keep them. Through the last, how many years is it? Since Tony Blair came into power in 1997, 2007, 2017, that's 20 odd years, okay. The population has gone up by 10 million people in this country. It was 58 million back in 1997. It's 68 million just under now. So that's, on average, 370,000 people per year coming into this country. We've been able to handle in the past 30 to 40,000, 50,000 a year without too much trouble. But 370,000 a year for an extended period has got to be something to do with why house prices are so high here, and why people can't get on the housing ladder, and why wages are so depressed. There's a lot of competition for jobs. Companies don't have to pay good wages. They're paying the minimum wage in a lot of cases. And people can't get on the so-called housing ladder. But I think Labour's economic view, despite the fact that they're notionally socialist, is much the same as the Tories. They want to increase GDP, gross domestic product, the financial output of the country. And they think that's the be-all, the bee's knees, the true measure of national wealth. So they've got that stupidity still. I don't know where these people come from. They think that increasing GDP is the way to increase the national wealth. Why? It's destroying the planet, and it's depressing people's standard of living. They don't care about that. As long as GDP is going up, we're doing all right. Well, they are. I think it's because that the current measures, which could be revised to protect the environment and could be revised to look at people's standard of living, isn't revised because they still want to be conquering the world and exploiting the world. Our whole economic system is based on a huge pyramid of massive exploitation all around the world. And the average citizen is oblivious to this. Of course, we don't see it, really, except that we note that we never seem to have enough money to spend. But the propaganda makes it clear that that's pretty much our fault, and we should just work harder, get a better job, study more. But it's not really that. The system is designed to exploit and to funnel the money upwards, which it does with great efficiency. And never mind the people or the environment. So I think that's why they don't want to change the GDP. They're nearly all wealthy people. And they're completely out of touch with it, quite possibly. Maybe there's a few who are smart enough to really understand what's going on. But they're not going to get anywhere in the parties, Labour or Tory. I mean, I think a reason for the Tory stupidity is that they've been promoting people within their party based not on ability, because they clearly don't have much, but on compliance and straightforward corruption, possibly. And I think it's much the same in the Labour Party. They've been kicking out people for dubious reasons, for non-compliance, and for they've been accusing Jewish people of anti-Semitism, for example, and kicking them out. I mean, it's very, very doubtful, right? Just, you know, I don't buy it. So I don't think Labour's going to be any less stupid than the Tories were, but it may be in different ways. Obviously, they're going to be much more woke than the Tories. I mean, they're going to be very pro-LGBT, what's it, okay, which, just to be clear, people can be gay if they want, but I'm not in favour of promoting it. And it's all over the place. In companies are promoting it, and shops are promoting it, and it's like all over the place, and that seems a little peculiar to me. It's something which in the long run is going to generate division if they start going too far with it, which they will, I expect, if they haven't already. I mean, technically, gay behaviour is a sin, okay, at least according to traditional religions. So it shouldn't be promoted. But what a person is what they are, right? And people should be tolerant of all sorts. I totally agree with that. But why all the propaganda? It's very strange. There'll also be a lot more racist, anti-racist, in the sense that they will be anti-white under the guise of being anti-racist, I think. Again, another means of generating division in society. I'm not quite sure who wants to generate division, but it will split the votes of various parties, won't it? Like, it split the Tory party vote this time, for a start, as part, since, as I said, they didn't manage to get immigration under control. And Labour, of course, will fail to distinguish between asylum seekers and immigrants. And there is a big difference between the two. And they'll also fail to distinguish between illegal immigrants and immigrants as well. And by way of division, they will probably give priority to housing for immigrants, including the illegal ones. Because that's totally what's happened in the past and has been happening for a long time. If you're native and hard-working with a job, you don't qualify for anything. Now, some of the argument for the large immigration is that these people contribute taxes. But I think the stats show only about 15% of them contribute taxes for the first 30 years or so. They also bring dependents who are not contributors. So that's maybe in the very long run. 2 generations, maybe. Meantime, competition for jobs. By all means, we need experts in this and that, because for some reason our own education system is not being funded properly, or it wasn't, certainly under the Tories. I think we will find that Labour will sort out the NHS and the education system somewhat. Maybe not right away, because they're stuck with various promises they made about fiscal responsibility, meaning keeping Tory policies. They need to look at that, really. It tells you who's in charge. It's the money men, not people. I think we'll face other problems with Labour. There'll be certain groups which will be above criticism, of course. They already are. You know who they are. You're not allowed to criticise Israel, or strictly the Israeli government, and you're not allowed to criticise Muslims or Islam. You can criticise Catholics if you want. You know, very strange. And interestingly, Labour lost some seats because of their pro-Israel policy. They're supporting the alleged genocide in Palestine, in Gaza. They're supporting the Israeli government. And yet the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister and Defence Minister because they believe there is a credible case of genocide. They won't allow the Palestinian people out of the Gaza Strip, and they're bombarding it. And these are civilians. I know Hamas committed an absolute atrocity as well, and I would have no truck with them. But there's a credible argument that many people are arguing that the Israeli government is going over the top. You can understand why they're fed up after all the things that have happened over the years, but the Labour Party lost a few seats because of that. And they don't seem to care, at least not publicly. So we're going to see a lot more of this kind of hypocrisy, I think. And will they be less corrupt than the Tories? The early signs are no. The thing about the Tories is that they were less interested in the good of the country and more interested in the good of themselves and the party. And we've already had one now cabinet minister, or is she deputy prime minister, questioned over claiming she was living in one property when she was living in another, and thereby being entitled to more money, okay, or something. I'm not interested in the details, but it's a bad sign, right? What I don't want to see is people saying, no, I'm not guilty, I didn't do it, I deny it all, and staying on for a few weeks and fighting it, and eventually having to be sacked. When someone is credibly accused of something, they need to be immediately suspended. Not sacked, suspended pending investigation. Otherwise, it's going to be more of the same old rubbish. Right. I think we've seen enough of it. But with only gaining 1.6% of the votes, Labour is going to have a hard time getting as many seats next time round. Reform, on the other hand, the new party, UKIP, basically, got a lot of votes, but they didn't get many seats. When you look at the numbers, the Liberal Democrats, the centrist party, they increased their number of votes by 0.7% to 3.5 million votes. That gained them an extra 64 seats to a total of 72. The Reform Party gained 12.3% of the vote. UKIP got 2% before, I think. Reform Party gained 12.3% to 14.3% of the vote. With 4.1 million votes, that's 600,000 more votes than the Liberal Democrats, but they only got 5 seats in Parliament. So the Lib Dems, 3.5 million votes, 72 seats. Reform, 4.1 million votes, 5 seats. Even the Greens got 1.9 million votes, plus 4%, and got 4 seats. The way our voting system works is it's by constituency. So whoever gets the most votes in a constituency gets everything. All the other votes are just thrown away. If you get one more vote than anybody else, you've won. You don't even have to get 50% of the vote, you just have to get one more vote than anybody else. So typically you'll get 30% of the vote, give or take, and you'll win. 70% of people will vote against you and you still win, right? So what it means is the Lib Dems were able to find a lot of constituencies, 72, in which they could get just that little bit extra vote. And Reform was only able to find 5 constituencies in which they could just knock the Tories or Labour down enough, or the Lib Dems, to get by. So they've got their work cut out in the next election. They probably have to work really hard at assassinating the Tories, is my guess. It may be that Labour will make such a mess of things that they can assassinate them too. If Labour is too woke and too racist, anti-racist, and too controversial in the international scene, I think they will do badly next time, but we shall see. Am I wrong? Am I right? Am I being too extreme in my views? This thing about them getting only 5 seats compared with the Lib Dems 72 for not much, for actually having more votes, is an argument perhaps for proportional representation. But there are lots of different systems of proportional representation. We've had a referendum about it and turned it down because the system that was presented was deliberately a bad one. Because the main parties don't really want proportional representation because the two-party state suits them very nicely. The Tories can now sit back and relax a bit while they sort themselves out, while Labour gradually gets into a mess and then they will get kicked out, and so on. It seems to be that the parties lose rather than parties win, and this election is a clear example of that, with Labour getting a tiny increase in vote. And in fact it's fewer votes than they've had in past elections, but it's an increase in the share of the vote. Stats are fun, aren't they? Now have I forgotten anything? Well, one thing none of these parties seems to have spoken about. Obviously the Greens spoke about the climate and all that, but the other parties have shown no interest in the consequences of climate change, and it's changing whether you think that humans are doing it or not. I do. And I do think that the environmental destruction from all our mining and stuff and resource destruction, 80,000 hectares of forest being lost a day, or chopped down, yes, chopped down or lost a day, 150 species going extinct every day. Do you think that's great? Are we going to survive that? At some point the ecosystem is going to not be happy with that. And our exploitative production systems are also going to break down at some point. You know, we can build lots and lots of solar panels and wind farms, but those things require rare minerals to function, and they have a lifespan. Solar panels gradually degrade with time, so do the wind farms apparently, and they need to be replaced. But we can close down coal mines, but for every coal mine we're closing down we have to open 4 or 5 or more cobalt and lithium mines and so on for batteries and what have you. Whoops, look at the sunlight here. And that's just as much destruction. I do think we have to get our carbon footprint down. Maybe a little extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere wasn't such a bad thing. Good for the plants. But we've gone beyond that now. The temperature is definitely going up. The rainfall is definitely going up. These are all things that were predicted based on the projected levels. But it's just being used to make money for the wealthy people as before, and never mind the environment breaking down. They're not really doing anything to help the environment. I think it's all about making money. And when our production systems break down because of it, the wealthy people will be all right unless they get their comeuppance from the general population. But things could get very difficult, and they could, of course there's possibility of conflict within countries and between countries. And it may be that the powers that be want to spark them a little early to keep the population lower so they can keep on making money. We might be seeing this in the Middle East and in Ukraine, maybe. How deliberate is it? Who's really in control? It makes you wonder if these conspiracy theorists have a point. It would be nice if the evidence wasn't quite so vague. But anyway. What do you think? Bye for now.